Hmm. Let me give her my cough
Hello,
drop
everybody.
here.
I'm Elise Giamacco Carlson, and this is Carl L. Cough Drop. Johnson. And he's ready to talk now.
I can talk now. You're tired. I'll do the talking. Yes. Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Panoramic Perspectives. Once you get that out, all those P's, alliterations. Pop, 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 pop. Yes. And of course, we have a special guest. If the guest wasn't special, I wouldn't even tell you that. But no, he really is. But let's see, what do we got going with Paranormal?
The next thing I can think of is the library. Jesse Smith Library in Harrisville on May 10th, Wednesday, May 10th, and I'm not exactly sure what time. I'll find out before then, and I will let everyone know.
Yeah, I remember 7:30, but it's good, 7:30. I will be there at 7:30 on that. That should be interesting. We're going to be introducing some of our new topics. And then after that, I think the next thing is Paracon in Estonia.
Paracon.
Yeah.
That weekend.
Yeah.
The 13th of 14th, that's taking place.
Right.
I don't know if they've set up their speaking schedule yet, so I don't know exactly.
It wasn't, but I believe we're going to be there on Saturday the 13th. So that's good. Yeah. In fact, that was the latest word on it. And let's have a little retrospective about, well, in October, we'll be at the, I don't know if you'll be able to make it. It depends on your schedule. What we just say is Warren's Con, Warren Seekers of the Supernatural.
Yes.
But before that,
Ocean State Paracon, my favorite of the year.
Actually, I so look forward to that, and I'm glad it's being returned to Harrisville.
It's always a good bunch of people, and it's always good to see everybody getting together, and it's not just kind of a money-making operation. It's a charity
always
operation,
for a good cause.
And it makes you feel good.
And it's the real deal. It really does. All of the proceeds go to charity, various charities. And some of these people I only see once that year. Oh, here we go.
There
Look.
It is, September 9th and 10th. Make sure you mark your calendars and show up.
I don't see Elise there, but I know she'll be there. I'm counting on it. Yes,
I'll be heckling in the back.
Yeah. And speaking of Harrisville, I was at the Conjuring House just on the 15th last Saturday. Yes, I was. And I had assistance. I had a partner.
Yes.
Elise and I were both there. And we presented lectures. It was actually done in tandem with somebody's birthday, and it was a very nice group, very attentive. Just everything was good about it, and good feeling there. And was it spooky? Oh yes.
No, it's always good to go with a bunch of people who are not paranormalists, I guess is the word.
Right.
They just were friends of the person who rented the house for the night, and they had never been to something like that before. And after you've been there a few times, it's hard to they're just kind of standing in the corner, like you can sit on the furniture. It's not going to throw you off. It's not that haunted.
I don't dare to sit on some of the furniture. I'm just think I'm too heavy for it.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, it was, and we had activity. I think what's most profound there is the message you get by EVP, electronic voice phenomena. That's startling that something could have a responsive personality and not have a body. That's what it's about, but it still amazes me. So all these things happening, coming up in quick succession. And then I have Pier Fest in New Orleans, and that's going to be September 27th, 28th, and 29th. And that is going to be in New Orleans, Louisiana. And
how exciting.
Yeah, I forget the name of the casino it's being held in, but he got a good deal on it. That's being put on by Howard Petrie, who does Swamp Paranormal Talk, because where they come from, the bio and all that. So that should be really special. He's telling me good things about it. And he keeps talking about the food down there.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've never been down there.
And there we can, if you like to gamble. No, I don't. I like going back to my room and going to bed. That's what I do.
Spend it on food.
Oh, fogey.
And drink.
Yes. Now to our topic. We're taking this off land and going to sea. It's a nice topic, and not far in the sea, but we have theories as to why certain structures like castles, old mill factories may be haunted. But what about once we leave the shore and get out into the ocean? I think they have their own brand of ghost out there, and it all depends on the history of the vessel. So for that purpose, we have invited Mr. Don DeCristofaro, who for many years has been associated with USS Salem. It's docked in Quincy, Massachusetts, and reports are, really, this is true, reports are that it's become more active in the last year, and even this year, it's intensified. Why that is, I don't have a guess, and maybe Don does have some idea why this is increased.
He's the man on the scene, so I think he would have the best information that we can get on these kinds of things.
Maybe it's just a mystery, but it is active. I have heard what I know is authentic, because there can only be so many people that you hear walking around. Disembodied voices you get a lot, and recorded voices, and apparitions.
Well, since we have him here, why don't we ask the man himself exactly what's going on?
I'm curious. I really am curious. All right, Don, are you there?
Hi
there, folks. Yeah. Now, this is in a sense, this is our makeup to you episode, because we were abbreviated last time. That's before we got the bug out, the kinks, and we had a little glitch going on. We found out the source. Ken zeroed in on that, and at least eliminated it.
Gremlins,
yes, yeah.
Gremlins. I just assumed it was the Gremlins.
Yeah, I think you were a good troubleshooter with that. You isolated it and eliminated it. So that's not going to happen anymore. But you were getting into such an interesting talk, and I said, this is meat and potatoes. I really want to hear this. I'll be audience. And then it was like shuffling a deck of cards. And Don, we're going to have your back. We're sorry, because I did want to talk about this so much. First of all, you are a Navy veteran.
I am.
So it's only natural you should be aboard USS Salem. Now, it was just tours at first, was it not? Before it got a paranormal edge to it. How did you really become involved in this? Yes.
For me, I became involved aboard the ship before I knew she was haunted. Yeah. Yep. I started giving regular tours before I knew she was haunted.
And then you got a little hint. Yep. People were telling you reports of what was happening aboard the ship, and then you started to hear and see things for yourself.
Yeah, well, we had a celebration down that part of Quincy is called the Point, and we had a celebration of Quincy Point's maritime heritage, shipbuilding heritage, and things of that nature, and it was kind of a walk down Washington Street towards the ship, and the finale of the thing was aboard the ship, and I gave a little speech, and afterwards, one of the volunteers came up to me and said, "Hey, that was pretty good." He said, "You've gotten used to being here, and I really enjoyed your speech. Did you know the ship was haunted?" And I said, "Yeah, sure she is."
Yeah,
and he said, "Come back tonight." So a friend and I went back that night, and we just kind of walked around. Nothing really happened. And I wanted to go down to the Combat Information Center, which has never really been all that active, but is kind of the most Navy looking room on the ship. When you watch Navy movies, you see the big plexiglass board with where the fleet is. And well, that's Combat Information Center. And I said, I just want to go down and take a look. So I went down, and when I came back up, I was standing at the top of the ladder and very clearly heard a dog barking at the bottom of the ladder that I had just come up.
And you would have noticed there was a dog aboard.
Yeah, the guy that I was with said, "Hey, there he is. Hey, Poochie." And he said that was a common thing. And we've since heard the dog quite a bit. We have a number of recordings of the dog now. But that was it. I was sold, and I really haven't left since.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Could anybody dissuade you, present any empiric logical argument that this ship is not haunted? I mean, could there's still any doubt? I don't think so. Oh yeah,
here we go. Not at this point.
No, too much has transpired.
Yeah.
What is the number one thing that people notice there? Is it something that's seen, something that's heard, something that's felt? Is there like one thing that consistently shows up?
Well, there are a number of things that are kind of common occurrences. We have an entity that we call the peeker that a lot of people seem to see kind of peeking around the corner, like around a hatch. And that's become several times a night when we're aboard.
I'll tell you something. It makes me kind of nostalgic, because I believe it was last May. I was aboard the ship, and I believe I was the first one to call it the peeker.
You may very well have been.
But I mean, I think that's apt, because this thing looks around and said, "That's the peeker. Let's call him the peeker."
You may very well have been the first one. So that's kind of the most common thing. But it's an audio. I tell everybody it's an audio gold mine.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
and now, we're at the point now where electronic devices, REM pods and things of that nature, we have situations. And if you go to the Facebook page, USS Salem Paranormal Experience, you'll see the videos where we're asking questions and we have 3, 4, 5 devices all going off, at the same time. And
Right.
it's the kind of thing where, and you guys have been doing this long enough that to try to, if somebody doesn't want to believe, they're not going to believe, and it's not our job to convert them.
Right. I mean, that's very tiring to try
somebody,
to convince somebody when they can't.
yeah, sure, but if somebody would like to explain to me how we're asking questions and all those devices are going off in unison, I'd be more than glad to hear it. But I don't believe it's going to happen.
Well, the diehards, I shouldn't even say skeptic, because skeptic isn't the bad thing at all. It just means you scrutinize, your
Sure.
evidence and surroundings. But people who just will not accept it, they'll always get the last word. And if you debate them, they'll always say the last thing. And that last word is usually, well,
Yeah.
or come on.
That's generally the best they can do.
Yeah, but
One of our
doesn't
viewers said
dissuade
that was
me.
the best paranormal experience they ever had was on board the USS Salem with Don and Carl.
Thank you.
I don't know
Thank
who
you so
Facebook
much.
I don't know
user
who that is, but I remember that. I certainly remember that night last year.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that was
That was the night we heard, like, it was a woman's voice, and we were in the infirmary, and we heard that so distinct. And you'd hear if somebody was walking around, you'd know that. And that was
Well, and in those cases, like in that case that you're talking about, we were the only ones on the ship.
yes, definitely.
I mean, once our group is aboard, I lock the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was Tom Donahue. Hey, Tom.
Oh, hi, Tom.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I locked the gate. So in those situations, we're the only ones there.
Yeah, so I have no doubt that was genuine. I can't doubt it. May I ask you, can you recap the history of USS Salem a little bit when it was seeing active service? It wasn't a warship, but it was used during the conflict.
Well, she clearly was a warship. I mean,
yeah,
she's a beast. She has those 8-inch guns, which
yeah,
her and her sister ships were the only ships that ever had those what they called semi-automatic 8-inch guns, who could pour 100 rounds a minute on a target.
Yeah.
So she was beyond any shadow of a doubt a warship. She never happened to see any combat, which I think is what
right. That's
where you were going there. So
yeah, but it had to be a defensible ship.
Yeah, she was ordered during World War II, but she never actually went into service until 1949, and she was in the Atlantic, so she never saw Korea. But she spent the majority of her time in the Mediterranean. She was the flagship of the United States Navy 6th Fleet, and as such, she was very well known in the region. In fact, later she was decommissioned in 1959. It was supposed to be 1958, but there was word of a coup in Lebanon, and the prime minister of Lebanon asked the president specifically to leave the Salem offshore because he thought the intimidation of the Salem being there would help keep things a little
impressive, yes,
in his country. So she got about 8 months of additional life. And I don't think 10 years is a pretty short time for a warship, but I think it wasn't a matter of her so much as it was timing.
Yeah.
1959, the Cold War was getting ready to kick into high gear. The Americans and the Russians, the navies were becoming submarine navies, and Salem just wasn't built for that kind of war. So I think she just kind of outlived her usefulness. But she saw a lot of death during that period of time, that's for sure. 1953, she was in the Mediterranean, and there was a very bad earthquake on one of the Ionian Islands off the coast of Greece. And Salem was really the only hospital in the area. So The estimate is that about 1,500 people came aboard the ship for treatment during about a 3-day period.
Oh, 3 days.
And the death toll was somewhere in the 75 to 80 area. So, that's a lot of people in a short period of time. She came home from Greece, and she was in Boston, and there was a light carrier, the USS Lady, and there was an explosion aboard the Lady that killed about 300 guys. But a number of those guys were brought aboard the Salem for treatment, and several of those guys died aboard the ship. Just a couple of years later, she was on the way back to the Med via France. She was sailing with a destroyer called John R. Pierce. Pierce had an explosion, a gun turret exploded, and a bunch of those guys were brought over to Salem, and a number of those guys died aboard Salem as well. And along with a couple of minor accidents that you're going to have aboard a ship that size, it's estimated about 100 men died aboard, men and women died aboard Salem over the course of her life. So, it's a big variety of people that are still there. A lot of civilians, as well as a lot of sailors, women and children as well. And as I mentioned, the dog.
Yeah.
So do you get any indication that many of those that, you get communications from on board were some of those people that died on board?
Oh, there's no question about it. And some of them, you feel terrible. It's wonderful that they come forward and speak to you. But for the longest time, there was a young man named Nico who we believe died during the earthquake in Greece.
I remember
He
Nico.
always seemed to be looking for his family.
Yes.
So, it was, as I said, it was nice that they came forward to speak to you. But at the same time, you just felt horrid afterwards because there was nothing you could do for this young man.
Right.
I don't know if they can be comforted. It's a mystery. Can you bring comfort?
It is a mystery. So there are situations like that. There is a young family, a 7-year-old girl and her parents, who were killed. We believe were killed during the earthquake. Who we speak to, although we joke about it because we speak to Lucy, the little girl, and she likes to sing. A lot of people seem to hear her humming and singing. We speak to her and her mother, but it's always kind of a joke when I use my dowsing rod speaking to the mother because I always ask to speak to the father and she'll never let him talk. So I always tell her it's just like my house. But yeah, there are certainly people from that situation that are still aboard the ship. There's no question about it.
Okay. I wonder how, we can only speculate, how aware are they that something has really changed? That's a scene that the USS Salem would have been near. I mean, you wonder, do they know they've passed on, or they just know it's a different kind of existence? Perhaps some of them don't know. They have that amnesia. They don't know that they've passed on.
Well, sorry. Go ahead, Elise. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I was just going to say we have some questions from some people who
I get so involved in this, I forget.
We talk to you talk to these folks, and again, you guys have been doing this for a long time, so and that's kind of a dance you do with respect to their fate. You don't want to be too blunt about it because because you're sensitive to the fact that they're one of the things that we're very sensitive about is the fact that these folks are still the same people they were before they passed away.
Personalities carry over.
They're the same people, and they deserve to be treated that way. They deserve to be treated with the respect that you would give them if you were speaking to them, standing in front of you.
I avoid that ubiquitous question of when people are recording, like, how did you die? Maybe they're not sure they died. Maybe you can't know how they died.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. We kind of dance around it a little bit because you don't want to just lay it on them. But we eventually get to do you know your situation? Do you know where you are and these kinds of things? And that's
Right,
generally
Right.
having the
that's
same
generally
a
how
good
we get.
Do
That's
you
generally
sense
how we
something
get there.
change? You know where you are.
having the same group in the same place
Surroundings.
over time. It's, you know, just like
Mm.
having some next door neighbors that begin to trust you after a
Yeah.
while and start
Yeah.
to chat and, you know,
Yeah.
tell you a little bit more
Hey,
about
Adam.
themselves and what happened to them.
Yeah. David Fritz is.
I just want to, because you put the question up a couple of times,
Yeah.
and it looks like somebody answered. We
Mhm.
do allow cell phones during investigations because, you know, so many people use them to record
Yeah.
nowadays. But we do, you know, we do make sure everybody knows that they need to keep their phones on airplane mode during investigations, because we all know the kinds of things that they can do to the instruments, especially EMF related instruments. So
Yeah.
It's a big interference.
Yeah.
I just go with the handheld. The digital recorders is what I would usually use there. And all that. We
Given
get
you get
results.
so much
Yeah,
metal.
that's what I do myself. But a lot of people use their phones for that now, and that's not a problem. That's not a
Yeah.
problem.
The operatory is pretty intense. I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Let you talk.
That's
I was going
okay.
to say about the operatory there. That
No,
place we got a lot
he
of
mentioned
activity there.
EMF, and I was, you know, there's any electronic appliances and whatnot. There's going to be some level of EMF on the ship,
Yeah.
and I was just
Sure.
wondering if there was like a high baseline on there as compared to, you know, a regular investigating a house or another place that's not a
Not,
big
not
metal.
really.
Yeah.
Not really. There are a couple of areas that we have to kind of be careful in.
Yeah.
But it's really no. The baseline is about the same as it would be if you were in your house.
Which is fine,
Okay,
yeah, as long
good.
as you know it.
That's a very cogent question because I've had people. Somebody said about USS Salem. Well, you got to
That's a nice
keep.
picture. I like
That's
that.
great. This looks like trig photography. It looks
Yeah.
like Frank C. Grace's work. That
I gotta tell you, one of our gang, Eva Nagy, has taken just some unbelievable photographs aboard the ship, and she's a wizard with filters, and some of the work she's done is just absolutely out of this world.
Yeah,
That
nice.
was one of them. I'm assuming.
that gives you a real depth.
Yeah,
You're looking
I like
into
that.
it. Yeah. People have said, well, you've got to keep in mind you're on a vessel that's out, it's hundreds of feet in the ocean. Well, 100 feet, yeah. But that doesn't really have any bearing on it, does it? Except that it's a different,
Well, other than the fact that I don't think there's any question that that water is a pretty good conductor.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think it really makes a whole lot of difference. It's the history and the guys that were aboard the ship really that make the big difference.
Yeah.
Ask them why it's increasing there, why it seems to be. It seems to be on the rise. And that's what the reports say, that it's, for as far back as I've heard about it, it was a haunted ship. But why is this getting more intense? Why more reports now?
Well, I'm going to tell you, and I don't do this very often, but I'm going to blow our horn here because
you should.
I really believe the activity aboard the ship that really, I'm going to say the end of May, maybe the beginning of June last year is when things really, and she had been getting more active probably for the last 3 years or so. She had been more active than she previously was, but probably around the end of May last season. And I think my gang should take credit for that. And not because of some of the reasons you might think. We certainly don't do provocation or foolishness like that. But the research we've done and the historical work that we've done with respect not to the ship itself, but to the guys has been so intense that we go aboard the ship now, and there's one gentleman in the hospital who we speak to on a weekly basis. His name is Frank O'Brien. He was a machinist mate, 3rd class aboard the ship. We've spoken to members of his family. We know Frank. We know Frank well. We know what kind of guy he was. And I really believe that the relationships we've forged with these individuals is really what's made the activity ramp up the way it has.
Yeah.
They've grown to trust you.
I think that's exactly correct. I think they've grown to trust us. They know that we speak to them with respect. I think it's a big factor that several of us are ex-military, two of us are ex-Navy, so
Right.
we kind of speak the same language, so to speak. And they know that we're familiar with their situation and the kinds of things that they did while they were aboard the ship.
Yeah.
And I think they appreciate the fact that we've done the work to get to know them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really do.
Just going in and, you know, making a spectacle out of them.
I was
Yeah,
there when we
no,
were
that's
first
not our gig. That's
Mhm.
really not what we do.
No, anybody can jump out there and say, "All right, now come on, if you're real,"
No.
or something like that. But I mean, we're already convinced. We don't need further confirmation. But we
No,
like
that's
evidence.
exactly right.
To know them. Do you actually get to know these discarnate personalities? It's marvelous. It's like it's confirmation.
Mhm.
You know? Wow.
Well, and we work hard to, when I talk about instruments, instruments are a funny thing, and I specify REM pods, but
Yeah.
they're a funny thing. A lot of things can make them go off, and a lot of people will investigate such that they have a REM pod in a room, and it goes off, and everybody oohs and ahs, and that's all fine and good. But as I said, what we tend to do, like there's a video on our Facebook page where we had a woman on the ship Halloween who looked very much like this Frank O'Brien's wife.
Well,
And there's a video on the Facebook page where the next week there's maybe 4 or 5 of us in the hospital, and I'm on one end of the room. Lou Caccagni is at the corner, and Lou says, "So Frank, do you remember the blonde woman who came in last week?" And everything in the room lights up. And then Frank says, Lou says, "Well, she came in, Frank, and she walked right over and stood next to Don, didn't she?" And nothing happens. And then he says, "Nope, you're right, Frank. She came in and she stood right by the door, and nothing happens." And then he says, "Or did she come in and come over and stand by me?" And everything in the room lights up, because that's exactly what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good.
It's an ongoing.
These are the kinds of things, and we do them all the time. Truthfully, we kind of have to do them because we have an entity on the ship that seems to like to make believe he's other people.
Oh gosh, that confuses
A mimic.
things.
So we have to play games like that to try to get a fix on who we're talking to. Interestingly, I don't think that guy is as strong as the other entities, because when he does answer, oftentimes it is only one instrument going on. Whereas when it's a Frank O'Brien, it's 3, 4, 5, whatever we have.
Different levels of energy that they can output.
Does each entity that you think you have identified have their own way of answering, or will they answer in different ways sometimes? Like sometimes they'll get the REM pods to light up, sometimes you'll get an EVP. Or does each one have their own favorite?
Yeah.
No, the responses we get are the full spectrum. We certainly, as I said, the devices lighting up, REM pods and paralights in particular, cat balls, of course. We talk to any number of these guys using kind of old school instruments. I have a lot of success with my dowsing rods on the ship. Michelle Rosner has a lot of success with her pendulum. So it's a pretty good spectrum, and we get quite a number of EVPs as well. What we notice is that the entities have a tendency to stay in various locations. Frank O'Brien rarely is outside the hospital.
I got that. That's where we had a conversation with Frank.
There's a young man, a gunner's mate, seaman apprentice by the name of Bill Austin, who we believe was killed in an accident in number 3 turret, which is back aft. and we generally speak to him in the third mess, which is back out.
Wow.
We speak to the corpsman, a first-class hospital corpsman by the name of McVeigh, who we believe worked on Bill Austin. We speak to him back there, and we speak to him in the surgery. And our old friend, the chief.
I knew we'd get to the chief.
Back in the third mess, but is now up forward a little bit more in the
he's moved
the woodroom galley.
Yes, it's funny.
So that's where they tend to stay in their own areas for the most part. Yeah. Although we speak to them about each other.
Oh wow.
So they definitely all know each other. I got to tell you, and I'm going to say this, and again, it's going to sound terrible, but
be terrible.
While I readily appreciate there are a lot of people out there doing things that we're completely unaware of, I'm going to tell you that to the best of my knowledge, there's nobody doing anything like we're doing on the ship.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, the relationships we have with these people, we've actually helped them with their relationships with each other.
Oh wow. Settled.
We have a man by the name of Robert, a senior chief radioman, who we believe had some issues with women on the ship. Sandra Morgan, who's part of our crew, had a negative experience with Robert. We had a woman aboard last year who said that he got right in her face, and she said, "I really believe if he could have hurt me, he would have."
Wow.
And talking to the little girl Lucy and her mother, they have always been terrified of Robert. So we spoke to the chief about Robert. And then we began to speak to Robert. And Robert said he had no idea why they were so afraid of him. And we've talked about it, and we've worked on it. And Lucy and the mother apparently are no longer afraid of Robert.
Oh my gosh.
I think yours is the only institution that performs ongoing astral counseling, on a weekly basis. Yeah, that you actually can bring them in and speak with them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I hate to sound arrogant or I hate.
Well, we understand the context,
but I got to tell you, it's amazing, and I'm so thrilled with the group of people that we have, and the fact that we don't have anybody in our gang who is interested in becoming one of the clowns in the paranormal circus.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's nobody that's interested in doing that. Everybody's interested in doing it for the right reason, and it's a wonderful thing. It really is.
Yeah.
It's a very unique and an ongoing experiment. Yeah.
Oh, there's no question. Oh, there's absolutely no question.
It's not ghost hunting. It is a cogent, valuable experiment.
I mean, so now one of the things we're working on right now is that Bill Austin, back in the third mess, has told us that he knows who the peaker is.
He knows the peaker.
That would be something to figure that out and call him out.
So now that's kind of our next project.
Oh wow!
We think there was a young aviation guy who fell in the hangar deck and was killed. Gosh. And we're starting to believe that's who we're dealing with.
Oh wow!
But we're not there. We're not close enough to actually say that yet. But we're beginning to think that. So.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I mean it's to say it's an ongoing experiment is an understatement, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The
now many times you can actually do an investigation and get cooperation. My goodness.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. At least it's crazy. It really is.
Throwing it up in the air.
I'm thrilled that I glimpsed the peaker that night last May.
Yeah.
It's so. I just thought somebody, who's down at the other end there, who's peeking around the corner. I mean, I thought it was a person for a second, and I thought, wait a minute, I've experienced the spirit I've seen it,
Mhm.
Yeah.
just for an instant, but it was there. And then other people were seeing it too. Ah, I think you
Yeah,
should go
it's
for it.
definitely one of what I would have to call a common occurrence aboard the ship
Wow,
at this stage of
that's
the game.
fantastic.
Yeah,
We
no
could
doubt.
give him the lease, you know, if you just stay where he's seen, and go to different areas where he has been seen that night when we go back there, and just be there for the peaker, and we can
Ghost
be
bait.
isolated.
I've
Yeah,
seen
we'll
that
leave you
show,
alone
Ghost
there.
Bait.
Ghost bait. Yeah, yeah, you be
Oh,
the bait.
that's see, they were doing the kind of ridiculous things that Don was referring to. They were putting like
Yeah.
bags over people's head.
Oh, that's yeah.
Yeah, that's not really our thing.
No, I
Not
can't
gimmicky.
imagine
It's
why.
not. It doesn't have to be gimmicky. Just experience it.
Just sit.
Document it. Record
That's why I always think.
And I think we've been lucky with respect to guests as well.
Yeah.
Our first public investigation of the season was last Saturday.
Okay.
It was what I would have to call wildly successful.
Nice.
And maybe it's just good luck. None of the guests seem to expect any of the craziness. You know what I mean? They all seem to understand that's not us. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
It's a location that deserves respect, and that's the way we treat it. And the guests have all seemed really appreciative of that.
Oh, good. Yeah, word gets out.
Adam, I'm not sure there is a time where the ship is more or less active. I'll tell you this: when I've come aboard the ship during the day for one reason or another, the activity is short-lived but pronounced. I came aboard the ship for the first time this season about 3 weeks ago, and as I walked through the ward, our office is up forward, and as I walked through the wardroom, I stopped at the wardroom galley and said hello to the chief. How's it going? You ready for us to come back? And there was a crazy loud bang came from the wardroom.
Oh, wow.
So it's certainly, it's certainly not inactive at any particular period of time, but we're not there during the day a lot. So I really can't say how active it is during the day generally.
Are you able
I know
to,
that it's like so many other places where things don't seem to heat up until a little bit later on.
Yeah. So you have some
9 o'clock.
commonalities there. So, like there are spikes in the activity that seem to repeat.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I have another question. I should let you talk more, but this is fascinating the heck out of me. What would you discourage aboard the ship? What instrument or what approach would you not allow, or would you highly emphatically discourage? Like say a Ouija board or spirit board, or what wouldn't you want there?
Well, there really aren't. There really, in terms of equipment or things of that nature, there's nothing that we've seen that we haven't allowed. We use a Ouija board occasionally.
Yeah, I have nothing against a Ouija board myself.
We use it occasionally on the ship, but we're very careful. We're very careful with it. Eva is kind of the
yes, I remember Eva.
Ouija queen.
Yep.
So we don't use it if she's not with us. So we're careful about it. But other than that, they really, honestly, all those things are just tools.
I was just going to say the Ouija is no more
and
anything
the
in
intent.
The
the intent and the energy is really what matters.
Yeah.
So there really aren't. I'll tell you that that provoking is not allowed aboard the ship.
Right.
Like you said, like you would treat a living person.
That's the way we do it. And frankly, if that's not what you're into, then you're at the wrong place.
And it's very easy to remember.
It's been my experience that like hostile provocation is just like turning off a faucet. You want to negate the activity, you want it to stop, just scold the spirits or threaten.
There may very well be situations where that's that's
I think
successful, not only successful, but that may be needed in some places and with some entities. But I really believe that the people that we're dealing with, I don't believe they would respond to that kind of treatment.
Yeah.
I don't think they deserve it.
Mm.
And my crew certainly doesn't feel as though that's the way to do things.
Right. I've seen it
So
effective, but that was in like a household, a special situation. You know, normally.
as I said, I'm sure there are situations where it's the thing to do, but Salem isn't one of them.
Mhm.
So that's really it. I mean, experimenting is, I always say that the one paranormal investigator that you can tell is full of it is the one that tells you he knows exactly what he's doing all the time.
Exactly.
Maybe
Maybe
Right.
he intuits the answer.
So we're all experimenting all the time, and we're all trying to kind of move forward, and you'd be a fool to pretend that you know all the ways there are to do that. So we're trying new things all the time. One thing that we are making a concerted effort to do this time around. One of the guys mentioned that in some of our public investigations, while I think it's entertaining, to some degree, we're all just kind of doing our thing and the guests are watching. So we're trying to be a little bit more interactive
Yeah.
this season, trying to bring the guests more into it.
That's a good idea.
We tried the other night, we used a human pendulum a couple of times and things of this nature that allow the guests to kind of participate more in what we're doing. And the experience is what it's all about when we bring these folks about.
Right. And they'll
So,
probably, you'll probably get some good answers and some replies because you guys are there. It's not like you just sent in a bunch of strangers now.
right.
All of a sudden,
No, that's exactly right.
without you being around,
That's
where they
exactly
might be
right.
like, what are they doing? Where'd everybody go? It probably wouldn't be as successful. But letting everybody take part. Wow.
No.
So you had said that you had gone when you first got there, you didn't even know it was haunted. You had gone on a tour, and they said come back and see. When did they first notice that there was activity on the ship? Like what? Was it when they were working on it to turn it into a museum? Was it when it was
I think
in use?
I think it was pretty early on. I mean, the ship came back home to Quincy in 1993. And I think some of the volunteers who were the originals, my parents among them, I think began to realize that something wasn't quite right from the very get-go. So I think it was pretty early on. What's kind of ebbed and flowed has been the attention that's been paid to it.
Yeah.
Early on, there were people that tried very hard to get something going, but it never really got going. And so that there have been kind of flows in terms of the attention that's been paid to the paranormal. Nothing's ever happened the way we're doing it now, I don't think.
Right.
But that's part of that is that the ship has new management now.
Mm-hmm.
That is just tremendous in terms of doing whatever is right for the ship.
Yeah.
And Margaret LaForest, who's the new executive director, her and I met very early on, and I think she realized how much I loved the ship itself.
Yes.
Right. You weren't just those crazy ghost people that come around at night to make
that wasn't that was never the agenda. And I think she realized that right away and realized that we could help each other and we've done a lot for the ship financially, certainly. But at the same time, we know how fortunate we are to have
like that one location that you can just keep going back to.
You can concentrate on instead of going all over the country.
Better the people that you can keep going back to.
Yeah, and I mean we get around. We travel.
It's not like you don't get around. You've come to Silver Mill, where I was.
We travel. We just this past weekend we were at Hinsdale Thursday night.
Okay.
Franklin Castle in Cleveland Friday night,
Wow.
and the Sweet Home Estate in Fillmore, New York Saturday night.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember talking to you at the
Road
beginning of the
trip.
week. I said, "Are you going to be rested
Yeah,
up time to do our show? Are you going to be available?" It's like you were getting around. And
Yeah,
you
so
driving to
we
these
still,
places?
we still managed to get around. We kind of joke, frankly, about the fact that we're spoiled by the ship. We're
Yes.
spoiled by the activity we see most weekends.
Right,
But
because you do get answers.
we still manage to get around, no question about it.
Yeah. See, I've jotted down topics that I figured you would get responses from you. You are not disappointing. Everything's leading to another
Oh,
account.
good.
Yeah, I mean, you're a good guest.
I got one comment here. I'm wondering what it means. I love the waving hand.
Oh,
Oh.
is that you, Pat? We have
Dragon.
we have a photograph, and actually there are a couple, but one, and it's a photograph of I want to say Chris Sanders and Jack Kenna, and in front of them there's like a hand that looks like it was moving. It's kind of blurry in the photograph.
Really? It looks like somebody put their hand there, but
I'm gonna tell you, I can't even count the number of ways we tried to reproduce that photograph.
Really?
And we haven't been able to do it. In fact, and Chris and Jack are close enough to they're in a hatch, and they're close enough to the hatch that nobody could have been standing there. You know what I mean? There physically wasn't room. It's a crazy picture.
Oh.
And we've since had a couple of other people. I'm not sure we've ever seen another one, but we've since had people say, "Yeah, I took a picture on the ship, and it looked like somebody waved their hand in front of it at the last." So I don't know whether it's been repeated or not, but people say it has. And yeah, we tried 1,000 different ways to see how the heck that photograph could have been taken, and we were never able to.
Really stringent analysis or repetition trying to get that.
Oh yeah, different angles and different standing in different positions and trying to. No, haven't been able to do it.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
Made that comment. I love the waving hands.
Well, that's got to be one of our guys. I think it's Pat Connors.
Pat Connors. So you and the chief have established a nice working relationship, because I think he was a little piqued that you were in charge of the tours and the groups and all that. You were
maybe early on he was. He started off. He was very, very, very. I'm not going to say malevolent, but he definitely was not a friendly entity early on. There's no question about that.
You and him had a little tiff one night. I remember that.
Yeah,
I wasn't there for it, but your hair was longer. You had the ponytail back then.
We've had a couple of we've gone at it a number of times.
He didn't like your hairstyle. He didn't
how
like
many
your
people
long
can
hair.
say that?
He definitely didn't like, during COVID, my hair at one point was like down to the middle of my back. and I couldn't even come aboard the ship without him pulling my hair the whole time.
Wow.
But people laugh and I'm not gonna say it here, but on Kindred Spirits, he definitely told me to F off in a very, very clear EVP.
Oh wow.
So we have our moments, but I told those guys, I told Amy Bruni and Adam Berry that, in my opinion, he just recognizes another miserable old sailor when he sees it.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the way that's just kind of the way we talk to each other. But he's come a long way. He's much more communicative now. Early on, people used to say that he just didn't like women aboard the ship. And I frankly, I always thought that was just kind of lazy. You know what I mean? That was just the easy answer. What I always thought, truthfully, was that he was a chief and he was a cook. So that back in the mess area, I think he was kind of in charge. And personally, I always thought he was angry that nobody else was working. that we had all these people there and they were all just kind of standing around, and he didn't understand why the hell nobody was working.
Yeah, good point.
So that's what I always thought it was. But we had the Halloween thing on the ship, Ghost Ship Harbor, and the chief was most definitely no fan of Ghost Ship Harbor.
Wow.
I think he saw it as disrespectful. I'll tell you that my belief is that the chief is not a guy who died aboard Salem. And people who are listening who have military backgrounds will understand what I mean when I say that. I knew guys in the Navy, who came from, I always say came from nothing. And when they left the Navy, they went back to nothing.
Yeah.
And the ship was home. The crew was their family. And I believe that the chief didn't die aboard the ship, but I believe that this is just where the chief decided he was happiest in life and where he wants to be.
Yeah.
We just recently found out his name.
Oh,
but he doesn't like to be called by his name. He likes to be called the chief. And we respect that, and I understand it. I think it's, he sees himself as the chief.
Right. It's good to be the chief.
Yeah, it's good to be the chief. So there's no reason why we would disrespect that. If that's what he wants to be called, that's okay with me.
Yeah.
I believe that we did a pretty good job of verifying that we know that his name is George.
Oh,
good. I wonder if you'd answer to George.
And we do the your name begins with the letter R, correct? And nothing happens, and he responds to G.
Yeah.
So we got a pretty good idea that's his name. We've had numerous sensitives tell us that we need to check George.
Yeah.
So we've done it. We've done our homework, and we're pretty positive that's his name. But that's not what we call him. That's not what he wants to be called.
Right.
And as I said, I get it. I understand why, and that's okay with me.
Yeah. And as far as him going back to the ship, if he possibly didn't die there, that's a conversation I always have with people about cemeteries. Oh, you must see so many ghosts in cemeteries, because I spent a lot of time there. I'm like, I haven't seen a darn thing. And if it's true that you can go wherever you want, why would you hang around there?
I believe that. Yeah, why would you hang around there? It's just a bunch of dead
dark cemetery, where they put you in the ground. Yeah, I think I'll stay here. No, going to Hawaii, man. Going to Italy.
Yeah, at least get a tan as it once was, but still worth the trip.
Oh my! So, and some individuals just seem to have a gift or a talent or an ability to communicate with spirits. Other, listen to it or experience it. We had one night we had Jacob there, and he was channeling, and that got kind of spooky.
At the mill.
Yeah. Well, not just at the mill. He was at the mill, but aboard USS Salem.
What? That Jacob? Same Jacob?
No, not the boy.
Oh, okay.
Unless I've got his name wrong. The
Jeremy was the mill, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
You're thinking of Jeremy.
Jeremy. Yes.
Oh,
I did have a flashback because there was a Jacob was a spirit at Slater Mill. He was a repeat offender.
You're thinking of there was a night a couple of years ago that you and James had an event aboard the ship, and Jeremy.
I remember that one, and that was part of it.
I remember that night well.
That was dramatic.
He was quite dramatic.
Yeah. Oh, I was going around saying, I'm of course we know what we're doing, and I'm in charge, and I'm talking cogently, and but I'm a little spooked inside because you don't know what's going to happen next. We're in a ship. I don't know. But I know what I'm doing here. It's going to be good. And it was good, really. I was never really intimidated, but you do wonder, what's next minute to minute.
Yeah. Back to what we were saying about it could possibly be they don't believe have or deserve to move on, so they choose a favorite place to stay, very possibly. Or
Going out by the chief.
some people said they believe, if they are religious and they weren't the best person they could be while they were here, that now they're afraid of facing judgment and they just try to stay behind. I'm good. I'll stay here.
That's a whole other conversation. The
right. It's all theory. Anything is correct. Anything is wrong.
Where their spirits, like in the case of the chief or the cemeteries, as you were talking about, that's one thing, but why they do or don't move on is a whole other. That's a whole other.
That we can't know until we get there. So, and you can't come back and tell anybody.
No, that's a fact.
One of my favorite questions always is, you don't want to be rude by, bringing this up right after someone passes, but, these people who have studied these things, paranormal, studied death experiences, studied consciousness studies, and then they pass away and you're like, talk to me. Why aren't you telling us what's going on? And there will be a reason, because it's so great.
I'll tell you this. And one of the things that I think, while I say it's our research and these things, the actual thing that if I had to pin down an event that actually lit the fuse, so to speak, last summer, both Lou and I, particularly Lou, lost a very close friend who he served with.
Oh.
And one night, as we were aboard the ship, he was there.
Really?
And spoke to Lou. And they, I'm not going to say they sewed up their issues, because I think there was a lot more to it than that. But I think there was some communication there that built some trust between us and this man that was visiting Lou and the other residents of the ship.
Oh, wow.
And as it happened, the very next weekend, I had lost a guy that I served with, went down to Philadelphia for his funeral, came home, and that weekend he visited me on the ship just to say goodbye.
Now that's really interesting, because those weren't, I don't want to, what do you call them, people who came along with the ship as you guys came in and started investigating. It's someone that came along later, and you said that the residents of the ship, I guess you'd call them, know that they're there and we're interacting with them.
This is what we believe.
All
sailors.
Right. So they'd fit right in. It's not like,
and of course, we've all been very clear about who the hell knows, really.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But you put things together. You put pieces of the puzzle together as best you can, and
you wouldn't be able to do that. More open to the possibilities.
And you throw out the things that don't make sense, and you try to piece together the things that do. And we know or believe that there are at least 2, we believe 3 portals aboard the ship.
Oh, yes.
So that we speak to people who are not necessarily from the ship, but from the shipyard.
Oh.
I've spoken to my cousin who worked with me at the shipyard a number of times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we speak to people who we spoke to a woman in Birthing the end of last season who had come aboard through a portal and felt as though she was stuck.
Oh, wow.
And it's exciting because that's an area of Birthing that had never been active before.
Yeah.
Wow. And Michelle Rosner one night said, we need to go down there because I think that's a portal.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you now, things are crazy down there.
Wow.
I like the term portal because it sounds so nautical. A fly to a ship. How would you define portal?
That's just a happy coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a conduit where the spirits can travel in between worlds, between dimensions,
between locations, anyway.
Yeah, it ties into quantum entanglement. The distance is not relevant. That they can be someplace instantaneously.
I mean, we certainly believe that. We certainly believe that.
Right, and like I said, open up your mind to that possibility and see what happens.
Well, and those are, while you work on things that you can wrap your head around, right?
Right.
We talk about the entities on the ship and their history and trying to move forward in terms of how we interact with them. But at the same time, there are those other questions. You know what I mean? We talk a lot about time, about the sense. What is their sense of time? Do they think that they passed on yesterday, or do they realize? You know what I mean?
Have they been there since frankly? Did they come back? Yeah.
Frank, you ask questions, and frankly, you get answers that could send you in either direction.
Yeah.
We certainly think we've solved the question of language.
Yeah.
Because while we certainly have gotten responses to Greek lullabies, by the same token, we don't have any problem communicating with the Greek civilians in England.
Right.
There's a filtration of sorts. Yeah, it's interpreted. It's like the universal translator in Star Trek in a sense.
Yeah,
it comes through psychically, and it registers in words that we can understand.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the other bigger questions, and that's what we should all be doing as well, I think. Right. What else are we doing it for?
Right. Exactly. We like to say there's only two reasons to investigate something: either to help someone who is asking for help, they're afraid to be in their own home or whatever because of activity, or to add something to the field. Try to be that person on the ground that's trying to figure out what's going on. Doesn't mean you have to get a degree and be a professional. A lot of things happen. People discover stars looking up in their backyard just through a telescope. You don't have to have a degree in astrophysics. People like, hey, what's that? And, it's a new planet.
But as you would,
that's right.
So investigators.
I do have to throw this in as well. There's the having a good time thing. We were joking. We when we were at the Sweet Home Estate Saturday night, we had a situation where Jim Hearn, one of our gang, started laughing so hard I thought we were going to have to call an ambulance.
That one that gets catching and everybody starts laughing.
And it was about something that happened at Franklin Castle. So I think that the other thing is, if you're not having a good time, then you're probably doing it wrong as well.
Yeah. And I mean, just picture it. Your group comes into a place, say that they're already there. Who's going to get more of an answer from people? A bunch of laughing, happy to be there people, or a bunch of people walking around yelling, "Hey, you're here, speak to us."
Yeah, right.
No.
And of course, we all know that some of the best activity, some of the best EVPs we've gotten have been when we kind of forgot what we were doing for a second and just
and they become incidental. And they join in your conversations.
Yeah, chatting.
And they kind of join in the conversation. In some cases, they do something that kind of says, "Hey, remember us?"
Yeah.
Really? But in other cases, they literally join in the conversation. That's great stuff. And I don't believe you get those kinds of responses if you're not having a good time.
Right. I think you're completely right on that.
How would you respond to a sensitive that told you, and I don't know if you've heard this, that these poor spirits need to be moved on? They need to go into the light and go to what is their destiny. They shouldn't be lingering here. I don't think you're doing spirit a favor if you cross them over necessarily.
Well, no, I mean, and I can tell you from experience that last year or maybe the beginning of last season, we had a woman aboard the ship who said that there were a number of spirits aboard the ship that wanted to leave.
Uh-huh.
And that she could cross them over.
Yeah.
And she did this thing. We're in the wardroom. She did this thing where she built a white, she said she built a white room in the middle of the room and told them to go to the white room. And she said, they're leaving. And the only thing I can tell you, I guess I'll use quotation figures and say factually, is that she did say one of them is standing over there and is reluctant. And one of my gang went over and put something on the table and walked away. Oh, put a cat ball on the table and walked away. And the cat ball immediately started lighting up. So, take that
Right.
with as many grains of salt as you wish. But where I was going was, I'm kind of proud of the fact that this woman said these people want to go.
Yeah.
And my gang, we never even discussed it.
Right.
We said, well, if they want to go,
Right.
then who the hell are we to
say no?
And the reason I'm so proud of that fact is that was potentially disastrous for business.
If they all leave, yeah. What have you got? You got another ship tour.
I can remember saying, what the hell, the ramifications of that, those people leave, the ship's not as active. People stop coming, start going to the Oliver House. I got to find some other way to get out of the house on weekends. We're talking about a disaster.
Did you notice anybody missing after that?
No.
So,
if they want to stick around, they will.
They weren't the ones who were talking to you anyway if they left.
Yeah.
So. Well, that's good.
Good riddance.
Everybody's where they wanted to be.
But in any event, we didn't know that at the time. We just knew that she told us there were people that wanted to go.
Right.
And I was pretty proud of the fact. I was pretty proud of the fact that we didn't even discuss it. We just thought if them leaving is the best thing for them, then who the Christ are we to tell them that they need
right,
to
and don't let them out. Lock the doors.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
There's another very well-known institution forbids spirits being crossed over because they don't want to lose business. They really do. They've got that clause.
It's on the rules.
It's contractual in the rules. Do not cross over spirits. I can't be accused of that. I bring them in. I don't get rid of them unless they're nasties. Unless they're real nasties, then I might try to make them feel unwelcome.
Yeah, I haven't had a problem yet.
Oh my word! So where do we go from here? When the movie is made about U.S. Salem and your involvement there, I'll certainly look forward to that.
Geez, me too.
U.S. Salem, the musical.
It has. Okay.
Frankly, that's more scary than anything I've seen on the ship.
You thought it up too, yeah. Oh my. Well, what time have we got there?
I know.
I know. I was going to point out.
9 something.
Actually, that's why you were over there touching.
I can't see.
Well, I mean,
I looked at it, but I wasn't going to say anything.
Well, we're talking about quantum, like speculative physics, like quantum entanglement and the theory of relativity. That's why we're not paying attention to time, because time is an illusion here. You're just too darn interesting to let go at 9 o'clock.
I can definitely dig that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we'll have to have you on for a third time, and I think you'll have more than enough to say. Plus, we might have gone through another month to 2 months before then. You'll have more stories.
Yes. We'll have to get back to the ship.
I just have to ask you, have you ever had the experience aboard USS Salem where you've turned around and there is an apparition or, something? It doesn't even have to be solid, but something that looked like a person. You just turn around, there's the ghosty. Looking at you in the face. Yeah, you personally.
I gotta be in all honesty, and as long as I've been doing this, I've never seen anything that real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I've never seen anything that real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought it was.
I
thought it was an actual person.
I have more than a few times where I've actually literally turned around. There's the person. Then I just think that's what I think. I say this is a solid person. In my mind trying to reconcile why is the person dressed this way? Why I don't recognize who they are. And within that's the first 2/3 of a second, and by the time the second has transpired, I realize I'm looking to a figure from the past. Or sometimes it's been longer than that. Turn around, there they are. But I never know when it's going to happen.
I'd certainly love to, but no, that's never happened to me. I have to admit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always potential.
It's going to be when you least expect it, too.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's time.
No question about that.
Singing happy trails to you, and we thank you so much, Don. This has been not just fascinating, but it's been enlightening. This has been educational, I think, for a lot of our listeners.
I'm glad to do it.
Myself.
Glad to do it.
And don't forget, I didn't put all the banners up and everything because we logged on a little bit late with Ken to get all that housekeeping stuff done. But you have a website.
Sure.
Our
website is thegbpa.com. That's GBPA for Greater Boston Paranormal Associates.
Yes.
YouTube, Greater Boston Paranormal Associates. Greater Boston Paranormal TV is our TV show.
Okay. Yeah.
USS Salem Paranormal Experience on Facebook.
We've got a lot of
So
them.
we're all over the place. No question about that.
And if anybody's wondering, definitely worth driving up to Quincy and getting on that ship. It's just infinitely interesting, and it's a place you can visit over and over, whether you're on a ghost tour or just looking at the thing. And it's
it really is a great location. We're so I get this early sometimes, and just to be standing out on the deck, walking around, and I think about how lucky I am to have access to the place. The museum spaces are fabulous, and it's a great take whether you're interested in the paranormal or not, really.
Right.
And I have a video of you when you and your team came to Old Slater Mill. Well, I'd maxed out my storage with my email account, which I've done a few times in my history. So I had to call, and I'm looking at emails from 2015, 2016, and there I see Don DeCristofaro. Say, here you go, Carl. Here's the video. It's the video of our investigation there. So maybe we'll throw that
on our YouTube page. There's
you got it there.
There's me with the dowsing rods, and Eva and somebody else on the Ouija board. That was a pretty crazy Ouija board session, Kyle.
Yeah, like I said, I don't. Sometimes I'll say, well, you got to be careful with those things, but as long as you brought the Ouija board here, we might as well use it. Yeah. I mean, somebody smuggled one in one Halloween. Somebody smuggled the Ouija board into Slater Mill. Our policy was not to have them, but I said, well, as long as they've got it set up, I'm not advocating, but I'm not going to shut it down either. Let's see what we got. And those things really can be startling.
Well, that was a wild session at Slater Mill. You were there. You're definitely in the video. Elise, you were there, but I don't know if you were there for the Ouija board session or not.
I don't know.
But you were there that night. I know that.
Yeah. Did we do? I think we did one in the house too.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Session in the house. I remember doing one in the house.
Yeah, my take on it was I did use them at Slater Mill, and in fact, there's a picture in my gallery where it shows me with Ron, who was there, my friend Ron, and we were doing a Ouija that night. And it's like, if you disagree with it, don't participate or don't show up, or send me an email and express your thoughts on it. But I never had any problem with them.
Well, the problem that night was that we couldn't get it to say goodbye.
Yeah, I remember that. That was in Sylvanus Brown House in the 1758 house. We couldn't get it to go. And
right.
I had such a good time with that. I miss those days. Yeah.
I don't know. I've watched the video a couple of times. You don't look like you're having much of a good time, but that's just me.
You had to be serious, like, what's going on here? Now, wait a minute. Ask it again, but, be careful.
I gotta go watch.
Did you hear that? Of course, that was my persona there. I mean, it was me. It was part of me. But inside, I'm tickled pink.
All we got is videos. The federal government isn't really very fond of having ghost hunts, apparently.
Yeah, at Slater Mill. I missed that. It's been 3 years now, almost precisely 3 years since we.
I have a theory, though. If you had some entities that you would talk to in that mill, wouldn't they come outside the walls?
They should.
Go sit
once it did, and I know now I'm extending our time here. There was one time, and people would say they had attachments, they had things follow, and I would say a blessing over them, or talk to them about, or have my brother come in and do a blessing. But there was one time there was a child's voice, a child person in that house there that we went to, the 1758 Sylvanus Brown House, figures into mill history. And I was giving a tour I had 5 people. One was an infant, and 5 people were having a daytime tour. And this was early October 2018. And I told them, you might hear something strange, but just be prepared. But I didn't think we'd really hear anything. The next room, I'm halfway through the tour, all of a sudden, it sounded like a voice that was sideways, if that makes any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But it was coming from the parlor room, and it wasn't a little girl. It was like, it was strange, and it was loud. So that's no little girl. What I interpret that is, after I thought about it, I think the spirit had been talked to and spoken to us so many times that it was trying to break through and really get a voice, and that's the best it could do. It came out that way. Of course, I didn't have it recorded, and it was a very eerie sound. That was, and somebody had heard it like earlier. That by this time, actually, it was like the second week in October. The week before, we had one of the ghost tours, and 2 ladies downstairs. I'd sent them down to the kitchen, and they came up white faced, and they said they heard a witches cackling down there, and they were sincere. And one of them was like a more mature lady, and they're like, "No, we heard that. It's down there," and it was rattling the doorknob. I heard that, the door latch, and then the next week I have a tour during the daytime, and that must be what they heard, because that could be interpreted as a witch's cackle. Then it's a year later, and I'm driving, and I'm kind of missing Slater Mill, and I went for a hike to one of my meditative sites, all the briars and brambles, and I'm driving out of that. It was Rocky Hill Road in Situate, Rhode Island. And as I'm turning a corner, in my car, in the passenger seat, that side, is the sound. So clear, that exact sound. It followed me. That's the first time that happened to me, especially in Slater Mill, or associated with Slater Mill. I heard that it was loud and it was clear, but I couldn't, it couldn't articulate the words. And I said, I can't wait to call Elise. I wish Elise was here to experience that. It was exactly that, and I haven't heard it. I thought that was the start of something. So 3 times it made itself known that way, and I haven't heard it since. I don't know why it never came back after that time.
To go sit on the bench outside the waterfall and see what happens.
Yeah, flowing water.
That's the kind of sound that I could live without, though.
Yeah.
I'm okay with.
Well, yeah, it was in the car, not my bedroom, so I guess it was good. But I was just so fascinated with it because I recognized it. Well, thank you so much. We've got to get to USS Panoramic Paranormal to come to. Yeah.
Gotta come visit.
Yeah, and see you
anytime.
there.
Let me know. I'd love to have you aboard. Love to.
Yeah, it might be two of us, or it might be a modest group, or who knows what we'll do. But we've got to come back. Thank you so much.
Drop me a line. Let me know. I'd love to have you.
I will do that.
Great, thank you.
All
My
right.
dear friend, thank you so much for consenting to be our guest. And like I said, this kind of makes up for our abbreviated chat last time.
Yeah, most definitely did.
Yeah.
Most definitely did make up for it. Thank you.
Yeah, you've bought yourself an invitation to come back. Please do. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
And thank you to everybody that was watching.
Yes, we love
asking
our guests.
questions,
Thank
giving
you.
us their comments.
It really does
Really appreciate
make the
it.
show into an experience. And
And-
we'll see you in 2 weeks. We're not sure our guest will be.
No, we'll have to find them.
We have Don back. Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.